Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Mess. So Tarek on our continuing series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project. It's been about 48 hours since we talked about the Nintendo 64 core, and you know Robert or FPGAZumSpass has updated it not once, not twice, but 3 times since then. They've all been small iterative changes, but the last one's been the most beneficial, so we're going to be talking about that up first. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, you got a Patreon link down below as well. But the most recent core, as of about 4 hours before I made this video, is that forced dedithering has now been added as an option within the actual menu, and I will show you what that means in just a moment. But this is fast footage, and YouTube compression being what it is, it might be slightly hard to tell in spots, but you will see the sky does not have any dithering dots on it whatsoever, but it also really isn't horribly color banding like it would before. And F-Zero is one of the best examples of showing you how to force dedither on the core, and I'm going to pause the screen in just a moment so you can get a closer look. Now pay attention to the banding on the right hand side of the screen. As I go into video and audio, that's where the settings are going to be now, and under VID there's going to be original, and you're going to see those dots come up. There's going to be off, and they're going to get more substantial, and there's going to be force, which is still going to keep the color on the background relatively even, but it is going to remove all of those dithering dots. Now not every single game is going to benefit from this feature, but the games that do, you're going to see a much clearer image within the actual game in and of itself. It's a small feature, but fundamentally it makes such a big difference in the visual aspect of the core. I know a lot of you have been talking about the dithering pattern and whether or not that was going to be a thing that you saw all the time, because some people did remember not seeing it that much on original hardware. So now within the core that is an option, and it looks great on F-Zero. Even in fast motion, you can see that this skybox twisting and turning in the background, it is a smooth look. If I move over to older footage of F-Zero on the Nintendo 64 DD here, you will see that sky does have all of that dithering texture pattern going across it. That is what we can now remove without there being that dithering pattern when it is off. I know it can get confusing about what off means, but just to realize that if you force dedither on the current core, you're going to get a much cleaner image out of F-Zero. And obviously you're still going to get the same 60 frames per second performance because this game is just rock solid stable on the current core. If it's doing anything different than real hardware, I have no idea. But one of the users in MiSTer Discord plays this game more than any other game I've ever seen anyone play on Nintendo 64, and he insists it is doing exactly what it should. Now, I don't know if we can trust him or not. He is from Wisconsin and I'm from Illinois. We're just better folks, but I do take him at his word for F-Zero. Do be aware there's also some fun camera angles that show off the skybox a little bit better with that dedither force, but it also is going to cause me to fly right off the track here and end up retired. But if you want to play F-Zero on the current core, it is basically perfect. If there's anything wrong with it, you'd probably have no idea. Now moving on to new improvements that have happened in intervening cores. All of the FMV cutscenes on Biohazard 2 and Resident Evil 2 for Nintendo 64 are working exactly as they would on real hardware. And every time I mention this, it is just a masterclass in compression techniques, because they were able to get all of the FMV sequences from the original game on PlayStation 1 over to the Nintendo 64. Sure, it uses a 64 megabyte cartridge, but you had 2 700 megabyte CDs for the original PlayStation 1 release, so the fact that you even get FMV sequences at all on the Nintendo 64 is wild, and the fact that they are now 100% just working on the MiSTer core is even better. Now, a fair warning about Biohazard 2 and Resident Evil 2 on the current core. It is one of those air quotes, it works until it doesn't games. That means that everything's going to be totally fine until the game just freezes on you. Is it going to happen? You're never quite sure where, so this is not a game that you want to sit down and try to complete yet. But I know Robert's aware of the situation. I'm sure he's going to improve it in the future. Whether it's on the CPU side, the RSP, or the RDP side, the core still is not done, and even though there's a lot of games that you can complete and feel exactly like real hardware, there's certainly some games like Biohazard 2 here in which you can't say the same, but that's because every single game uses different implementations of the Nintendo 64 hardware it was capable of, so there must be something in the code that either isn't strung together correctly for Resident Evil 2 to understand it, or it's missing out of the code completely, or it's just a ghost in the machine. You never know. But go ahead and listen to the cutscene audio. It is quite good. About 45 seconds. I'll be back with a lot more games that just work. Enjoy.
Hello? Hello? Look, I'm sorry I bothered you, okay? Just don't come any closer. Are you listening? Ah. Ah! Wait! Don't shoot!
Get down!
And if you're thinking that reverb is part of the core, it is not. That's how the real game works on real hardware. I had to go and check on YouTube to get a direct capture from a Nintendo 64, and it sounded identical. Now, another game that you guys have been asking to see a lot, there are a few viewer requests in this video, is more footage deeper into the game on Rayman 2. There's going to be a little bit of an update here, and a little bit of a viewer request test as well. And this is one of those awesome games on the Nintendo 64. It is so much fun to see this running in real time, and big thanks to Andy D for doing the Rayman capture this week as well. He helped me out with a few of the games. It is so much fun just to see this work on the core again, because it's only been a few months since this thing basically had no text whatsoever and a decent amount of graphical glitching. It is now just basically another game that you can 100% complete, and if there's anything wrong, I really wouldn't be able to tell. But obviously when I show you guys this game, it's usually just at the beginning, so I've been getting some save files, and Andy D sent me over one. So if you want to see some more Rayman in the future, let me know if there's a specific level you want to see, and maybe I will check it out. I will say though, it is still Rayman 2, and some of the areas can be exceedingly hard with the flying mechanic, but you can play this just like you would original hardware. On the controller front, this is definitely a game I think that works a lot better on the Brawler 64 NSO controller than the actual Nintendo 64 format, just because I do not like it in my hand. But tell me down below what controller you're using to play this core. I would be really curious. There seems to be a big mix of people out there using different things, and I'd like to kind of take a poll of the audience to hear what you guys have been enjoying as well. And of course, for the next video, I always tuck a few viewer requests in, so if there's any game I haven't shown recently that you want to see, leave me a comment down below and I'll definitely try to check it out. But again, outside of just how difficult that section in Rayman 2 is, this game looks, feels, sounds, and plays like real hardware. If you threw your Rayman 64 cartridge into a Nintendo 64 and played it, I don't know if you'd notice any real differences between this and the original hardware whatsoever. And I do feel like I'm getting close to running some previews on comparisons to real hardware, but tell me down below. My Nintendo 64 is not modded. The best signal I can get out of it is S-Video, so do you care if the video isn't perfect on one side? Obviously, MiSTer has the advantage with HDMI out, but if you want to see some comparisons, tell me below so I know if you mind or not. Now, another viewer request is Virtual Pro Wrestling 64. There's two games on the system. This is the original one, and I get so many requests for these wrestling games, which is not at all surprising. They are some of the best of all time, and you know who else is the best of all time? Ric Flair, or whatever that character model is supposed to represent. It is Ric Flair apparently, but it doesn't look like anything the Nature Boy ever looked like in real life. Diamond Dallas Page here. Also, again, I don't know who did the face models here, but that is definitely not Ric Flair. It looks more like a wild boar mixed with a man with bleach blonde hair. But all jokes aside, it's still an incredibly fun game to play, and it's another game that's working exceptionally well on the current core right now. There's so many wrestling games on the Nintendo 64, ranging from decent to absolutely Hall of Fame legendary status good, and I definitely put this up at the higher end of the tier. But tell me down below what your favorite wrestling game is, and if I haven't covered it in a little while, maybe I will revisit it. But again, it's just so much fun to see these games running, especially some of the Japanese games, because I didn't even know this existed back when the Nintendo 64 was on store shelves, and honestly, why would you? There was a whole big world of Japanese exclusive wrestling games that never came over to North America on the PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64, Sega Saturn, and now with the MiSTer FPGA core, you can totally play them. And I do love that this one actually has blood effects as well. We opened up DDP right there, and he is now profusely bleeding down his head, and that's always a fun time just to see a little more graphical effect in the game. But if you want to play this one today, it just works. It's a ton of fun and it sounds great. Certainly isn't the best soundtrack on the Nintendo 64, but the audio quality is matching hardware as far as I can tell, and I'm not sure how they pin people over in Japan, but that doesn't seem like anything I've ever seen on television before. Ric Flair definitely did win the match though, expected it always, he is the greatest of all time. But it's just one of those games, it's so much fun to play, and there's so many games out of Japan that you've probably never heard of before. Now while I have you here, I don't have any footage of it, I'm working on it, but Hey You Pikachu now has microphone support if you have the right adapters and the original microphone as well. I had a couple screenshots from Discord, but they just didn't really look good in the video, so I'm telling you, if you want to play Hey You Pikachu on the current Nintendo 64 core, the two of you that actually want to do that 100% can. Now another game that has been improved since the last time I looked at it, and one that people ask about, is Automobili Lamborghini. That is a mouthful, but I got it done, so I don't have to take another cut at that. This is definitely not my favorite racing game on the Nintendo 64. I would put it in the C tier category, but that's one of those things. I don't have to love it. If you do and you enjoy playing it, I am happy for you. What I can say is the performance seems to be very close to original hardware, even though it's been like 5 to 10 years since I actually played this game. So if you notice anything on the screen, do let me know. And it's not that this game isn't good. It's got nice graphics, it's got a decent soundtrack, the controls are a little bit floaty but acceptable. I just never really get a great sensation of speed or racing from this game whatsoever. I'd much rather play San Francisco Rush or Rush 2 compared to this one, and we are driving around in Lamborghinis. You would expect the sensation of speed to be a little bit better. And sometimes the course layout has so many turns you never really feel like you get a good straightaway to actually stretch the car's legs whatsoever. I just wish that the course layout was a little bit different and the game was a little bit more exciting. It kind of feels like a generic racing game, but it has that Lamborghini license. I just wish any other company had gotten that. Somebody like Atari or Midway could have done a lot more with that license than somebody like Titus could here. Not to knock the game, it is technically competent and it is playing well on the current core. It just never really excites me that much, but tell me down below if you played it, what you think, because maybe I'm just wrong and haven't figured it out yet. I'm not saying I am the gospel on whether or not a game is good. I just give you my opinion and you tell me what you think about it down below. But if you do want to play it on the current core, it is working. Definitely do not drive into a guardrail in real life in your Lamborghini. You're going to have one hell of a repair payment to make on that. And it is fun that you can even take Lamborghinis off-road at certain points in time, but I will tell you it's very not advisable. The minute you get off tarmac on this, I'm sure just like in real life, your car becomes completely uncontrollable within the game. But the fun thing is that means we can jump into a tree, do no damage to the car, and just rip some donuts until we move into the next game. Another one that I realized I hadn't tested, and I absolutely love and remember from the Nintendo 64, but as I got to it, maybe I love was a little bit misplaced. And that is going to be Worms. I absolutely love the franchise, and I had this as a kid and played the ever-loving hell out of it on my Nintendo 64, but now the controls just feel absolutely antiquated. If I wanted to play Worms again, I'd play on my Steam Deck, on my computer, anything else with a mouse and a keyboard, versus having to use the Nintendo 64 controller. But some of you did ask if Worms work, and I was curious as well, and I can tell you right now, for as far as I was willing to get into a game, it seemed to work perfectly fine. It's just one of those things. It's not a game that translates well over to a controller, but I know that some games are capable of using keyboard and mouse, so if you want to see something like that in the future, leave me a comment down below and maybe I will try to hunt those peripherals down and talk about them moving forward. But Worms is an awesome party game, and if you can wrap your head around the controls, you'll definitely like it. But the big takeaway from this update is definitely that forced dedither option and just how much better it makes F-Zero look. Even in motion at 60 frames a second, as the thing just tears across the screen, it looks so incredibly good running on MiSTer. I would definitely pick this over real hardware any day of the week and twice on Sunday if I wanted to play some F-Zero. And for all of you that love the game, if you want to see any more of it, it's going to be a couple episodes. I know you love it, but I do need to diversify, especially if you live in Wisconsin. But that is the current slate of updates for the current Nintendo 64 core. Of course, I'm going to keep updating these videos as the cores come out. And if there is a game you want to see, just tell me down below and I'll try to get to each and every one of them. But if it does take me a couple weeks, don't be upset. I do read them. It just takes me a while to get to every one of them. But the core is shaping up absolutely incredibly. I cannot believe that this is feeling like real hardware in some games, and I can't wait to see what the next couple months have. Because Christmas is coming up soon, and Robert promised us one game playable by that holiday, and I expect to be able to play one Nintendo 64 game by then. Bye-bye.